Have you ever heard a whistle in the middle of the night, coming from a place where no one was there? In Brazil, there is an ancient legend, deeply rooted in the country's culture, a story that is part of Brazilian folklore. But for many, it's far from just imagination. This is the story of Matinta Pereira, one of the most well-known and chilling legends in Brazil, especially in the northern regions, like the Amazon. In indigenous villages and remote communities, stories about her are still told to this day. People say they've heard the whistle. They say they've seen a presence in the darkness. And some claim she was watching them. What makes this even more unsettling isn't just the story itself. It's the certainty of those who tell it. There are people who swear to God they saw it, that they heard it, that it was real. But is this Brazilian legend just an old tradition? Or is there something more, hiding in the dark? After all, who is Matinta Pereira? Her origins trace back to the native peoples of the Amazon, passed down through generations as a warning, a mystery, and a sign of respect for what cannot be explained. Over time, the legend also absorbed influences from European folklore, making it even more complex and intriguing. And maybe, after hearing this, you'll never hear a whistle the same way again. Now, get ready to find out. But to understand who Matinta Pereira really is, we need to go back in time. Long before cities, roads, and modern technology, the native peoples of the Amazon were already telling stories about mysterious presences that lived deep within the forest. For them, nature was never just a place. It was alive, filled with spirits, unseen forces, and hidden secrets. And among those stories, the legend of Matinta began, an entity connected to the mystery of the night, the silence of the jungle, and most importantly, a sound that still gives people chills to this day, a distant whistle. As time passed, this legend was shared from generation to generation, spreading through indigenous villages, riverside communities, and small remote towns. But then, something changed. When European colonizers arrived in Brazil, many of these indigenous stories began to blend with outside beliefs. Ideas of witches, curses, and transformations slowly became part of the legend. And that's how Matinta Pereira became what we know today, a figure surrounded by mystery, fear, and respect. A presence that, according to many, should never be ignored, especially when that whistle starts echoing through the darkness. But after all, what does Matinta Pereira look like? Unlike what many people might imagine, she's not a monstrous creature or something visibly terrifying. In most stories, Matinta appears as an elderly woman, simple, often unnoticed within the community. Someone who, during the day, could easily be mistaken for just another ordinary person. But at night, everything changes. According to the legend, Matinta has the ability to transform. Many believe she takes the form of a bird, flying across the dark skies while letting out a distinct whistle. A thin sound, distant, but impossible to ignore. And it's exactly that whistle that announces her presence. Unlike other legends, she doesn't attack or chase people. She watches. She moves closer, slowly, and somehow, she always knows where you are. Some say that when you hear the whistle, you should never respond. Others believe ignoring it might be even worse. But one thing is certain. When the sound begins, she's already nearby. But the legend of Matinta Pereira goes beyond her appearance. In many regions of northern Brazil, especially in the Amazon and Pará, there are beliefs and rules that people still follow to this day. According to these stories, when the whistle is heard at night, it's not just any sound, it's a sign. and some say that when you hear it, you should never completely ignore it. In certain versions of the legend, people believe you must respond in some way by offering something. It can be as simple as saying, "Come back tomorrow to collect," because, according to tradition, Matinta may return the next day, in the form of an ordinary person, to claim what was promised. And that's where the legend becomes even more unsettling, because most of the time, no one knows who she really is. It could be someone from the community, someone you see every day, someone who seems completely normal. There are also reports that the whistle changes direction, even when no one is visible, as if it's surrounding whoever hears it. And the more attention you give to the sound, the closer it seems to get. For many, this isn't just a story. It's something to be respected, something that should never be challenged, especially in the silence of the night. But what truly gives this legend its power are the stories. Across different regions of the Amazon, accounts of Matinta Pereira are still being told to this day. In towns like Manicore and Karawari, older residents claim they've heard the famous whistle at night coming from the forest, or even passing over the rooftops. Some describe the sound as distant at first, almost unnoticeable, but as time goes on, it seems to get closer, as if it's searching for someone. In the Juruá River region, where indigenous groups like the Kanamari live, there are old stories about presences that reveal themselves in the forest, especially at night. Stories that aren't told as fiction, but as part of everyday reality. In communities near São Pedro, people describe completely silent nights being interrupted by a thin, constant whistle, one that's almost impossible to locate. Some say the sound begins deep in the forest, and without explanation, suddenly appears right next to their home. Others claim it seems to come from every direction at once. And the strangest part, even when someone tries to find where the sound is coming from, there's nothing there. No person, no visible animal, just silence, and the feeling of being watched. There are also stories of people who, after hearing the whistle, begin to feel like something is following them, even inside their own homes. Nothing visible, nothing physical, just a constant presence. And in some of these accounts, the next day, a stranger appears, as if they're just passing by. Someone ordinary, someone simple, but somehow they feel different. And that's when the fear grows stronger, because in many of these places, people believe Matinta isn't something far away, but something much closer than anyone would expect. What's most striking is that these stories come from different people, in different places, yet they share the same details. Simple people, long-time residents, people who have lived close to nature their entire lives, and many of them say the same thing. This is not just a legend. In the Amazon, especially in more remote areas, these stories are part of everyday life. They are passed down from generation to generation, not as entertainment, but as something to be respected. And maybe that's what makes it all even more unsettling. Because when different stories start to sound the same, maybe it's not just a coincidence. But the legend of Matinta Pereira isn't just about fear, it also carries a much deeper meaning. In many regions of Brazil, especially in the Amazon, stories like this are part of how people understand and respect the world around them. For many, Matinta represents a warning, a reminder that there are things that can't be easily explained, and most importantly, that nature should be respected. In more traditional communities, growing up hearing these stories doesn't mean living in constant fear. It means learning to be careful, to have limits, to understand that not everything needs to be challenged. In this case, fear isn't just something negative. It works as protection, as a way of teaching from generation to generation, respect for the unknown. Beyond that, the legend also shows how different cultures blend together in Brazil. Indigenous elements, popular beliefs, and outside influences come together to create something unique, something that is still alive today. And maybe that's exactly why Matinta Pereira has never been forgotten. Because she's not just a story, she's part of a people's identity, part of their culture, part of how many see the night, the silence, and what cannot be seen. And in the end, maybe the real mystery isn't whether she exists or not, but why so many people still believe. And now that you know the story of Matinta Pereira, the question still remains, is this just a legend, or something that still exists, hidden in the shadows? In Brazil, especially in the more remote regions of the Amazon, these stories are still alive, not as fiction, but as something that is respected, something no one wants to challenge. Because for many, the danger isn't in seeing, but in hearing, and most of all, in responding. So the next time you find yourself in silence, late at night, and you hear a distant whistle, would you have the courage to ignore it, or would you respond? Let me know in the comments what you would do. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, because there are many other legends that you may have never heard before, and some of them might be closer than you think. So, do you believe in this legend, or do you think it's just a story? And if you heard that whistle, would you respond, or stay silent?